Okay, and we're good. So tonight, once again, I'm here with Brian Mashad, Greg Levitz, and it's part two about dive gear, different kinds of gear. And we left off last week, we talked about thermal protection as far as wetsuits, dry suits, semi-dry, talked about masks, talked about snorkels, and talked about regulators. So tonight, do you guys have anything to input as a recap from last week? Or are we good to go?
I'd say we're good to go.
We're good to go. So tonight, we're going to start by talking about SPGs or submersible pressure gauges. Now, I guess, who did we leave off with? We went Brian, Greg, me, Brian. Greg, you're up. Let's talk about SPGs.
All right, so SPGs, they're all supposed to do the same thing, and they're all supposed to tell us basically how much pressure we have in a tank. Obviously, pressure equates to cubic feet. We know the whole deal on that. And so what do I personally use on mine? I actually use the XS Scuba ones. I always thought they were solid, and I've never really had one fail.
Yeah, pretty beefy, pretty robust.
Yeah, pretty robust and pretty standard. I mean, to me, I put a bolt snap on it. It goes off to my chest D-ring. So when I'm diving, I just have to look down and it's right there.
Yep.
I never really have to unclip it or anything. And it's on a hose that is it's the correct length or the proper length for where I place it. You know, there are some books that say, well, you should have it exactly this, or you know, it's what's comfortable for me.
And now by placing it, because I tend to do the same thing, I'll bring it across, I'll clip it to my chest D-ring. So while I'm diving, all I do is lift my arm up and I can check my gauges.
Yeah.
And by doing it, by having the proper hose length here, it really is, it's not too bad if you want to clip it off to your waist D-ring.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was the same. Surprisingly, it was about the same size, maybe an inch or two longer.
Even with your belly, really?
Matter. But you know, or I just moved the clip. I'm sorry, but I've had the other ones. Go back to the picture, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, some of the pros and cons, which is interesting.
Brian, you know he missed that completely, right?
I didn't, but
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So it turns out that I actually had one, and I think it was plastic. The whole thing was plastic.
I've had a couple of those. Good in an emergency, but not really what you want.
It wasn't robust, you know, and it never broke, but it's just I've always felt as though if I was to bang it, that it was going to break. And it was in our big rubber housing, similar to the one up on the upper right-hand corner, similar to that.
Yep.
Or in the center, but it had, you know, and obviously it had a compass on there, and a pressure and a depth gauge. You know, we're a computer, so now everything is separate. You know, we wear our compass on our wrist and our computer on the other wrist, which tells our depth and time. And then the pressure for me, it was just a simple pressure gauge. Keep it simple, keep it. And I took the boots off. You know, the coverings from where everything connects. Everything was really basic, tied to a bolt, you know, with a bolt snap on it.
Now, why do you take all the covers off?
Well, for me, it was for visual inspection. It was a quick and easy way to see if you're having a problem versus having to pull it back, check everything out, then shove it back on there. I was never bending the hose in half. I was never really moving them. So to me, having that, you know, that little, that hose covering, that didn't really do anything.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we should note that they are available both in standard and metric, which is PSI, pressure, and bar. Different areas, different people use or are comfortable with different gauges.
Right.
Bri, anything you want to add to SPGs?
I will say personally, I've never really used a standard SPG like what's there. like what we
Okay.
just saw pictured. Right after my open water class, I very quickly moved into an air integrated computer.
Okay.
But now with the tech class, I do have, I think it's an XS Scuba pressure gauge. And again, having the right length hose makes all the difference in the world. When
Yep.
you've got the appropriate length, which for somebody that's a little bigger, it may need to be a longer hose. You know, the book says, no, it should be a 32-inch hose. Yeah, right. I'm never going to get that past my shoulder. So, you know, but having it too long, now you've just got all this extra
Yeah.
that's, you know, just gets in the way. You end up having to tuck it places in order to make it somewhat comfortable.
And it makes an incredible snag hazard.
Oh, heck yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you get snagged on your buddy that you're swimming next to, that's not a good thing because your hose length is wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Brian hates to have a long hose.
There ain't no long hose on anything I dive. Even the 7-footer's too short.
So moving right along, I'm up next. We're going to talk about bottom timers. Now, being able to tell how long you've been underwater is, to me, just as important as how deep you are or how much air you have left, because that dictates your no decompression limit, or if you get into technical diving, it starts doing your decompression and decompression stops, and you need to be able to know how long you are where you are for what you're doing. So what we're looking at here is some very simple, over on the left, these are literally bottom and depth timers. Love them. Very basic, very
I had that
simple.
one.
Yep.
God, isn't that the one I had the blue one on the bottom? Below
You
that.
had the blue one on the bottom. I had two of the black ones up on top.
Yeah.
And they no longer make these, is the
Right.
problem I'm running into actually right now. I was looking for basic bottom depth timers. Moving over into the center, you have a dive watch. And a lot of people are into this because they can wear it out to dinner as well as wear it to go diving.
I have one.
And
I-
then,
Similar to that. It was my first, when I became an instructor, my father bought it for me as a present. And
Yep.
it was a Citizen Hyper Aqualand. And I'll tell you, that watch was awesome. It stored 30 dives, did the whole profile, good looking watch, comfortable. I wore that thing everywhere. My left hand weighed about 2 pounds more than my right hand at all times. But I had to put a different, I took the rubber strap off it. I was always afraid I was going to lose it. So I replaced it with basically a one piece, a Zulu strap or whatever you want to call those things now.
yeah,
And that seemed to work. But the bottom timer, I remember I cut mine off.
Yep.
I cut the things off.
drilled holes.
I did, yeah. I drilled holes in the side
Yep.
and put a bungee, and I'll tell you that thing lasted a long, long time.
Yep. And I actually don't know where my two bottom timers went because I went into computers.
Yeah.
Once I went into my rebreather, so I was diving my electronics for my rebreather and my backup computer.
Yeah.
But another one that was listed up there was just an analog timer.
Mhm.
It literally just kept creeping and just told you that was it. This is time. It didn't do anything else. It didn't do anything fancy. It was literally just a timer. So there are quite a few options and inexpensive options. Like I said, unfortunately now, I can't find those bottom timers anywhere. All the manufacturers that I'm talking to are telling me I need to buy a computer. So it's going into very basic, simple computers, and which brings us to back around to Brian is, let's talk about computers.
Ooh, hey. I like computers. I've had a few. I've the ones I have right now is a Sunto, which I absolutely love. Air integrated. The first computer I had was an Atmos. It was just a basic computer. Did not. I had to use a pressure gauge at that point. It wasn't air integrated. Then I went into the Atmos XT, which was had a wireless transmitter, which was really cool. You get, like you see there on in the center of the screen.
Okay.
It actually looked a whole lot like the transmitter looked identical to that one. But yeah, you hook the transmitter up. What I like about it is it eliminates a hose.
Okay.
So now I don't have that hose coming in on the left side for pressure. Mine are all wrist mounted. I just happen to have my computer here wrist mounted with bungees, and that way there it's always a comfortable fit, and you don't have to worry under compression that it's going to loosen up and fall off. But the computers that are out there now do a lot of really cool stuff. Not only does it give you your tank pressure, your time at the bottom, your no decompression limit. It'll count down how much time you have at that depth. And as you start to go up, you can watch your no decompression limit actually increase as you work your way up a little bit. Some of the nice fancy ones will give you your surface air consumption rate. It'll tell you how much air you're breathing, whether you're working or resting. It'll show you that info. It'll track your dives, so you can actually graph your dive out and see how, what your dive profile looks like. Some of them have the capability to hook up to multiple tanks. So you're diving with your buddy and let's say you've got the same computers. You can actually take each computer and have it look at the other person's stats as your buddy. So hey, what's my buddy doing? Oh, my buddy's at this air pressure, whereas I'm at this air, so you can actually see the difference. Or if you're getting into tech diving, where you're going to have multiple tanks, multiple gases, you can actually have that all programmed into it. So as you switch from gas to gas, it just makes the transition with you, and it keeps everything all in that one screen. Like we said on the last one, they're inexpensive and reliable. The computers can be very not that as far as cost goes. The one that I'm diving right now typically retails out the door close to $2,000 for the computer and one transmitter. But I really, really like the computer. This one here's got a rubber case on it, but the actual case that's under the rubber is stainless steel. So it's actually very robust. This thing is bounced around the inside of my truck, and it doesn't even have a mark on it. A really good, decent computer won't be cheap, but the features it'll give you, it's wireless control. I can download everything into my phone or my tablet, wirelessly make changes. It has a built-in compass that, oddly enough, and I did this little experiment, I took a magnet and brought a magnet around it, and it's not affected. The magnet doesn't affect the digital compass.
So, and I had a question about that, and we can get into it later. On a normal compass, I have a rotating bezel, so I can take a heading, and I can do quite a bit of different things with a rotating bezel and a manual compass. Can you do that with a computer compass?
Yep. It pulls it right. It pulls it right up. You can actually set your heading. So instead of having the rotating bezel that you turn,
yep,
you tap on it, and it goes, oh, okay, that's where you want to go. And then as you deviate from that, it lets you know. Very similar to the rotating bezel. It just gives you a fixed point on the digital screen. But one of the things that I like about it is with a regular compass, if you're not holding perfectly flat, you tilt a little bit and then you turn and the bezel doesn't move.
You mean the disc?
It gets pinned. Yeah.
Because the disc gets pinned.
Yeah.
This, it doesn't matter. That tipping doesn't affect its reading. This tip front to back doesn't matter.
Okay.
The one key thing about it is making sure that you're locked in a position. Because I wear it on my left wrist, so my hand goes into the crook of my arm, and that's how I lock so that I know my positioning. Because if my arm comes out a little bit too far, well, now obviously the reading's going to be different. If I bring my arm, if I just hold it up, my hand is free floating, it's not against anything. This positioning across my front is going to change my heading. So just locking to my wrist. Whereas a lot of the typical compass I've always had on a tractor where you pull out in front of you. While it works fine, I really do like having the digital, and there's the compass, and then I tap back and I go back to my other readings. So it's a quick tap. I can take my heading, I can put my setting into it, and it's just one less piece to carry. But the thing that I really do like about it is that the tip doesn't matter. And oddly enough, like I said, I'm not sure how they're doing it, but magnetism doesn't really affect it.
Okay.
Like having that metal object nearby. But
So some really cool things about computers, what they can do. I mean, it's I guess it's everywhere we look. Computers are taking over pretty much everything we do.
Yep.
Or being involved, I should say, in everything we do. So, no, excellent. Greg, you got anything to add on computers?
Well, I've always been. It's funny. I've had a few computers, and I think at one of our talks we spoke about the problems with the computer.
Okay.
For instance, had a quick disconnect for one of them. Like it was an Uatech SmartCom quick disconnect, very expensive one, well over $1,000 at the time when I bought it, which is probably like in 2000 or so, somewhere in that range.
So, just to quickly interject, we do need to address and or acknowledge that computers have come a long way since they first came out. So since my first Sunto Cobra, they've had several different computers and tremendous improvements.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Well, they absolutely have. But the one feature they haven't really improved on is the O-ring connector.
As far as a quick disconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about the same style, and so you click it and you twist it and it comes apart.
Yeah.
Or it puts together. For me, I had a leak, and it was, we fixed it one day and it leaked again the next day, and it was always a problem. As far as it being solid, yeah, it was solid, but it for me, it just wasn't there. I was never a big fan of hoseless, or wireless, where you're hoseless and wireless, I guess, only because some of the wrecks that I've been in, or some of the caves that I've been in, I was always afraid of getting them smacked. That was one part of it. And then the other part was you got to deal with two batteries now. And you never really knew when either battery was going to pop. And I don't know if the one that screws in the puck, if that is battery operated also. Brian, do you have two batteries or one?
There is a battery in my transmitter.
Yeah.
That I can check the state of charge through this one. This is rechargeable.
Okay.
A full charge gives me 32 straight hours of runtime.
That's pretty good. See, back then it really wasn't. When I was
my old XT.
Yeah.
I was always afraid. When we'd go for a set of weekend dives, the transmitter and the computer got fresh batteries.
Batteries,
Even
yeah.
though they said, oh, these should be good for the dive season. Nope. It's a fresh weekend, fresh set of batteries.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing I didn't like about it. But I was willing to live with that, to put new batteries in it every time we went, for a weekend of, students and all that stuff, just because the rest of the features of it I really liked.
Yep.
And that was my thing with this. When I looked at getting this one, I'm like, all right, what's the battery thing like?
Right.
The transmitter has a 6-year battery.
Holy moly.
And a guy at the dive shop, he's on his 4th year and hasn't had any battery issues. And the one thing is they're not serviceable by a shop.
Right.
It does have to go back to Sunto for a new battery.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're completely sealed. We don't mess with them at all. You can actually see where they're like screwed together and then like they melted the plastic. I mean, it's, you're not getting into it. But I guess when you send it back, it's a nominal fee for them to put a new battery in. It's not a big deal. But yeah, your wrist unit will show you the state of charge, and it'll let you know. It's supposed to let you know when you have like 10 hours worth of diving left.
Yeah.
So that you have plenty of time to either complete the dive, get out. It really shouldn't interrupt the weekend of diving. They've made huge improvements on the batteries.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm next, right?
Sure.
Good. Yeah. Anyone have anything to add about what we've talked about up to this point? Going once, going twice. So now we're going to talk about tanks. And the reason we're going to talk about tanks come in so many different shapes, so many different sizes, so many different different materials. Aluminum or steel, different valves for different regulator configurations or different regulator connectors, I should say. Different characteristics and different tanks are going to affect your body or your position, your dive position, your trim in the water differently. I know that sounded really confusing, but
Not really.
If I put an aluminum 80 on my back, we're going to stay single tanks for right now. I put an aluminum 80 on my back on a back plate and wing or on a jacket style BC. If I put a steel 80 on the same setup, it's going to feel different on my body. It's going to affect my trim differently. I might be head down, I might be butt down, whatever. You're going to have to adjust it from tank to tank. So the type of diving that you're doing, I would personally say, is going to affect your decision on what tanks you're buying. Being a single tank recreational diver, let's keep this clear. For right now, recreational single tank, you're usually using an aluminum 80 or a high or low pressure steel tank. We agreeing on that?
Yeah. So you're right. So I have like steel 100s, high pressure 100s.
Yep.
And I have low pressure 85s.
Right.
Anytime I've gone anywhere where I've had, gone on a cruise, gone whatever, it's aluminum 80s. I have not seen anything else other than aluminum 80s. Once when I first got certified 20 something years ago, they had a low pressure steel. And then I found out a few months later they switched everything over to aluminum 80s. So
right. Because they're more economical for a dive shop to have a rental fleet of 100 aluminum 80s versus 100 steel 80s.
Well, price different wise, absolutely.
Price different. Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
So let's go one step further. I mean, all your tanks are basically the same shape. whether it's a 6 cubic foot tank, it's the same shape, it's just a lot smaller.
Well, the bottom could be flat or rounded, you know, if it's steel.
You're right, you're going to run into rounded bottoms in steel tanks. You're not going to run into a rounded bottom in an aluminum tank that I know of. They could come out with something new that I don't know about. So I'm
Right.
going to say that I know of, you don't have a round bottom aluminum tank. But they all do the same thing. They all do it the same way. They store and supply air to a diver. Being able to, my suggestion to anyone buying tanks or looking at buying tanks is, what is your end goal? Where do you want to end up? If you want to end up as a single tank recreational diver, try different tanks in that single tank configuration to figure out which one sits most comfortably and best on your body. Same thing if you know you're going into technical cave. Well, technical cave, you're going to end up in a set of doubles. So you're either buying single steel tanks and then eventually having them banded, or you're buying a set of doubles out of the gate. So you're adjusting those tanks for your body and the way you dive in this configuration that you dive. What else we got?
Well, you know, I'll tell you, when I bought doubles, even recreational diving, let's say I wanted to extend, I mean, look, at 35 feet, you can stay there for forever, right? You know, I might wear a set of doubles.
Yep.
Because maybe I want to spend 2.5 hours on the bottom searching for something and not have to worry about coming up and down, up and down. Or, you know, so what I did was when I bought my first set of doubles, I actually made sure that they were the same size. I know that sounds kind of weird, but you can say you can order them. You can order them matched, and that's always a good thing. So that when you do band them up, the manifold's not crooked or anything. But as far as tank size, yeah, I mean the common is an aluminum 80, but you can do anything. They have all different sizes.
But I guess my point was, the best thing for someone looking into buying tanks,
Try them out.
to try different styles, different sizes. You can get a high pressure 80 that's a little short, stubby thing. You know, maybe it works great for someone that's shorter.
There it is right there, right in the corner in that picture.
I didn't realize I still had the picture up, but yeah. That's a high pressure steel 80.
That actually looks like my 65. I got a steel 65, looks just like that.
That's a cute one too. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I left that up.
No, that was a good thing. All right, so obviously you have tanks, but then you have different, whether it's a DIN or a K valve. So
okay, so let's talk about real quick. We'll talk about the different valves. Go ahead, Brian. Go ahead. Start.
So when I started buying tanks for myself, I bought a couple of steel. Well, I bought one aluminum 80, and then about 2 years later went, I really like the steel tanks. I like how they fit better. So I bought 2 steel 65s, 2 steel 100s, and 2 steel 130s.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all, yeah, they are. I don't have to put much lead on at all. But what I like about them is they were the 3442s. So I could do either a yoke or DIN.
right.
I had the option either way. And what was nice with that is, as I was going through different regulators and in changing setups, trying to figure out what did I really want to stick with, I had a measure of flexibility with the tanks that I had. I knew I wanted steel. After having the one aluminum and then trying a couple of steel tanks, I'm like, okay, no, I for the tanks I'm going to own for me, I want them to be steel tanks. And but then it was like, well, do I want yoke or din? Which, I'm like, I don't know. Well, hey, the 3442, it allows you to do both. Sweet, even better. And now I think the way things are set up, I've got my 100s and my 130s. I can no longer go to yoke. I've changed the valves out for banding together for doubles. But neat thing with one set of the valves that I have, as you open or close, you get a red band or a green band, which is one of the things I like about about the valve. You can just look at it and know, are you open or closed? It's
That's good for a bunch of students sitting around, with their tanks on. You can quickly glance over.
Yeah. When you're getting ready, you're on the boat, you're putting stuff together. Hey, did I open that up? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Doesn't do you much good when it's behind your head.
Right.
But when you're doing your pre-dive stuff, or like you said, looking at students, are they open before they jump in the water? That's all I got.
No. Cool. Greg, you got anything to add?
Yeah. So when I started, it was just aluminum 80s. That's how, and I bought a ton of those. And over time, I noticed that no matter what I did, I brought the brightest ones I could possibly buy, and they were bright yellow. In the end, they ended up being bright silver. They peeled off within the first, 20 dives. They started to peel. And from the outside, I'm like, oh my gosh. So you'd peel a little bit one dive, you'd peel a little bit more. Anyways, then you end up stripping them, and now you have a tank that has no paint on it. But then I noticed, for me, the aluminum 80 size-wise, height-wise, that was pretty good. So I ended up going with low-pressure 85s, and it was a very comfortable fit. I bought steel 100s, another good fit, a little bit shorter than aluminum 80. But it was the right size. It was the right size and comfort, and my attitude in the water was always bad. But no, my attitude in the water, was right with that. And then, of course, understanding the characteristics of steel. So you could take two steel 100s from two different manufacturers and say, well, a Worthington is going to be 5 pounds negative empty, but a Faber, whatever, excess scuba now, I'm sure, has them. That style, that tank is going to be 8 pounds negative. And so the question was, which one do you want to buy? And you just have to try them, and for me, it was, let's try the tank full. Let's try the tank just about empty and see where I feel. Do I need to add an extra 10 pounds of lead? Do I not need to add the extra 10 pounds of lead? Where do I need it? Where, is it going to be up higher on my bands, or do I need a weight down the center, or do I need the weights low on my hips? So that's really, and then of course the valves were kind of funny because I always had a valve that had the insert and it didn't, for me it was, the insert. I always had a pressure gauge, and I just put the pressure gauge on it, and it was set up for din or not. It didn't matter which one I used. So, yeah, you got to try them though. You definitely have to try them. I remember trying steel. I think they were 120s. I couldn't even get. I mean, they were so heavy. Of course, this was before I even went to doubles. With the doubles, it was like, oh my God, I can't believe how heavy it is. I shrunk 3 inches. I used to be 6'3".
So I do want to interject that going into technical diving, having steel double tanks on your back or double steel tanks on your back, I have aluminum 80s strapped to my side. So whether I'm in my double tanks or my rebreather, my Deco or bailout bottles are aluminum 80s. I'm not.
Right.
If I put steel tanks on my side as well as my back, I'm never getting off the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
So
right, and I always slung a 19 or a 30. That's kind of how I always did it.
Yep. All right. Who's next? Greg? Brian?
I don't know. What do we got?
Brian, Greg?
Well, what is it?
Oh, no.
Go.
Brian,
It might be me.
might be you. Let's talk about BCs.
Oh,
Because we all, I don't care who you are, everyone that I know, whether you're a technical diver or whatever, everyone started out in a jacket style BC. I think that was the first type made after the horse collar.
I think so.
So let's talk about BCDs.
Okay.
About the most important thing I can say about these, and I don't care which one you pick, doesn't matter. It absolutely needs to fit you properly. When I started off, someone sold me a BC because, well, you're a big guy, this should fit you good. And it was, holy cow, too big.
Yeah.
I was brand new. I was taking the class. I didn't know the difference. I took my class in that BC. And talk about, and I didn't realize how uncomfortable I really was. Class finishes. I decide I want to move along, meet Bert, yada, yada. He's like, what are you doing in that BC? I'm like, I don't know. It's what they sold me. He goes, stop. He gives me his BC, which, I mean, Bert and I are not the same size.
Mm-hmm.
I got into his BC. We made a couple minor adjustments to it, and it fit. And what a difference in the dive. It was a jacket style BC. It wasn't back inflate. It was a jacket style. I can't remember who made it, but at any rate, having a BC that fit right, I could put myself in any position in the water and stay there because my BC fit right and it worked the way it's supposed to. It enabled me to trim easy. The one that was too big, I could never get my trim right. And then if we were doing a surface swim, I ended up taking it off, inflating it, and leaning on it because it was all up around my neck and couldn't do it. I dive a wing now, a backplate and wing. I got one for single tank, one for doubles. Absolutely love it. It fits right. It's got I like the weighting properties of the stainless steel plate, but we always talk about how fit and comfort is like one of the biggest things for diving. And having dove for almost 2 years in a BC that did not fit the way it's supposed to, let me tell you what a difference going into one that actually snugs up and holds you the way it's supposed to. If you like jacket, you like jacket. If back inflates where you want to go, great. I mean, it comes down to fit and comfort. What are you comfortable with? They dive very differently. When you inflate the jacket, you're going to get the squeeze on your sides. You're going to know you're putting a lot of air in the BC. Back inflate or a wing, you don't feel any changes because it's all happening behind you. Your weighting is going to be different to keep you trimmed right. And certainly when you're at the surface, you're going to have to be mindful of how you're trimmed because it will be very different. But if you have one that fits you right, you'll be happy with it. Whether it is a jacket, a back inflate, or a wing, it has to fit right. You can't skimp on that. That needs to fit right.
And I guess that's what I like most about a back plate and wing is the harness I can customize to me. Now, if I'm going from a wetsuit to a dry suit, you're going to have different adjustments. It's just the nature of the beast.
But you can do that with the wing.
Right.
I can take your wing, put it on, adjust it, and it's fits right for me.
Correct.
Would yeah, there it is.
All right. So I'll give you the my feelings.
Okay.
12 feet
Yep.
on a back plate and wing is makes you completely fully adjustable, whether you're a big person or a small person, right? 12 feet on a jacket style. Typically, it's not. It's small, medium, large. For me, the most important thing, it has to be able to float me at the surface with all my gear empty. So what I mean is like my tank's empty and full, but it's got to be able to, at the heaviest possible time, it's got to be able to still float me and not float me face down. I had a back inflation one that a friend gave me. I used it for many years, really loved it. It took me a long time to realize couldn't feel anything back there. So I would overinflate it and it would lean me forward. When I wore my jacket, so I've had probably 4 jacket style BCs. One of the biggest problems, and I don't know why they don't, well, maybe they probably do. I just haven't really seen a good one, is put a crotch strap on a jacket style. Because at the surface, what are you really doing? You're sitting on the crotch strap as the seat. And you don't have that tightness feel. You don't have the going, and you certainly, when you're clipping across here, you don't have that feeling that it's hitting your neck. I know a lot of people, you'll see that a lot. And then a lot of people will say, well, I don't need to wear that. Well, maybe you don't, but if it comes with it, there might be a reason why it comes with it. So I dive a wing, stainless steel plate. And I think I have 32 or 35 pound lift on mine. And that's plenty. I think mine's a 45 or a 50 pound doubles wing. Same plate, same harness, everything is identical. I just boom to boom. Actually I have 2 of them. So it's just as simple as, it's the same plate. They're identical. Yeah. I mean, we've all had ones, and you're right, Brian. It's all about comfort, no matter what. I never understood the like some jacket style BCs would have pockets where you could put things in. Problem is, couldn't reach them. They were, you could never really reach where they were. So it never really made sense to me. When I have pockets, my pockets are on my thighs. So I can reach down, pull out what I want, put back in. It's on a leash. So, but it's got to be comfortable. That's the bottom line. And it's got to fit well. Everything's got to fit well. And then the question becomes, is it 1 band for your tank or 2 bands for your tank? What's more appropriate? Well, I mean, for me, it was always 2 bands. But I've seen
How's that go again?
2 or 1. Yep.
The jacket BC that I had was a double band, but it was with a buckle. It was the wire bail with a buckle.
Yeah. Oh, not the other one. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't the pull tight cam band. Yeah. It was, and that BC, the way the jacket would inflate, the pockets actually were more up front than back on the side.
Yeah.
And when it would inflate, the front would actually like turn up a little. So it would sit in your arm. And was actually very comfortable to float at the surface.
Yeah.
Because it didn't have the chest strap.
Yeah.
And like I said, that man, I wore that thing out. I dove that BC 12 years, 14 years. And then one night in a pool session, with students, I inflated, and I had my own little mini jacuzzi. And that was the end of that BC.
That was definitely the end.
It went from black to being chocolate brown
Yeah.
from use.
Well, that's
Um,
yeah, definitely pool use.
And from that, I went to a wing. I'm like, all right, I need something, I need to replace this. And I was looking at tech diving, so that's why I switched to a wing, went to the single tank. My single tank wing has, I think it's got 36 or 38 pounds of lift.
Yeah.
And my doubles wing has 85.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a big wing.
Big wing, yeah. I if I had to do it all over again, I would get a wing. For me, backplate and wing.
Well, and we were talking about that. I was talking about that with a few different people. And I agree with you. I guess I should start by saying that. But the reason I agree with you is I just got done reading a certain book. I'm not going to mention the name or the agency, but they made a really good point. And the point was, if you start off with a backplate and harness, called a Hogarthian harness, if you start out with a backplate and harness, you grow with it. So you start off with a single tank and a single tank adapter. You do your open water, your advanced open water, yada, yada, yada. You want to get into tech diving. You want to start diving doubles. The transition is a lot easier and a lot smoother because you're diving the exact same harness and backplate that you started out in.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go through the adjustment phase all over again. You might have to figure out where the tanks are going to sit in the bands or where the bands are going to go into the backplate, but at least you're starting out with something that's very comfortable and very familiar to you.
Right.
And that same setup will carry you through your entire diving career, even when you go into a rebreather, because I kept my backplate and my harness and just put it onto my rebreather, and I was in the same setup.
Yeah.
But that was the big one for me, and that made the most sense. And I can't believe I didn't learn about that earlier.
Yeah.
But Greg, you were going to show us a single tank adapter.
Well, that's the funny part. You just said single tank adapter, and here's mine. So this thing weighs about 8 pounds, which means 8 pounds off of lead. I don't have to have, 8 pounds of, oh my God. I don't have to have one of these.
Right. You're getting old. Well, and that's just it. So if you put a single tank adapter and you put a steel 100, you've pretty much eliminated any extra weight you need to carry.
Yep.
And we always try to do the minimalist thing, is not to bring anything on our dive that we don't need or we're not going to use. So
Right.
if I can do without a weight belt to worry about, why not do it?
Yep.
Anything else? Anyone? Greg's up next.
Uh-oh.
Dun, 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 dun.
What's next?
Dun.
Ah, get the lead out. Okay.
We're going to talk about Greg's favorite subject.
All right. So when I, boy. Okay.
Hey, we've all done that.
All right. So I'll tell you I'll tell you the story afterwards. So I've used pretty much all those style. I've had weight integrated pockets that release, and the comical part is when they release, they're always released at the wrong time, and they end up on the bottom, and somebody else ends up finding them and is really excited because they have a pocket full of lead.
Because lead's not cheap.
Lead's not cheap. So we'd find that. I then moved to, I made my own style soft weight pockets that are attachable, and those are the ones that I held up. I made my own, and for me, they were the most comfortable when I wore a belt. And I also used regular solid lead with, I've always used a steel. I had a plastic,
Buckle.
yeah, plastic buckle. I lost that one for a second. But the plastic buckle broke at the wrong time. I don't know why. It pulled it solid enough. So I've gone through a couple different styles of metal ones and found the one that works for me.
Yep.
And pretty indestructible. If you look on the one with the blue things, you have little tri-glides which hold the weight pockets together. Well, those tri-glides can also be held on, you can also hold the hard lead in the middle. And so you can literally put them, right where your pointer's going, in the middle of that. And that works great. Some people twist them, but I find if you've got the tri-glide, then use the tri-glide. It's a little piece of metal. That's all it is. For the set of doubles, you might put a V-weight or a soft weight, there. What does it really boil down to? Comfort, number one. Ease of release, number two, if you have to release it. Now, what's the reality of releasing weight from the bottom? Highly unlikely. Typically at the surface where we'd like to release the weight if we had to. I don't dive with any lead, really, extra lead. And so if I'm getting out of stuff, I'm getting out of my unit completely. And then of course I have because of my dry suit.
And that was the big thing I found when I went into doubles and tech diving. I was overweighted by wearing 2 steel tanks on my back. I'm overweighted out of the gate. So now trying to get trim and trying my body position, I'm adding even more weight, as little as possible, but I'm still adding more weight to get my body where I need it.
Yeah.
So that was the bad thing, if you will, about going into steel doubles for me.
Yeah, I didn't have that issue at all. It was kind of funny because I'm a big dude, so I didn't really have
more buoyancy.
Well, you know what they say. So I had I'm not sure what they say, but I never really. I was always like I needed sometimes like 2-3 pounds extra with my steel doubles. That's it. With my steel single tank, maybe I needed 10 pounds of lead, and I put them in the pockets attached to the band, and that was it. And it was, and then the question was, well, in the water, I changed them. You could change them top band, bottom band. You could put more weight in the top, less in the top. I mean, lead weight comes in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 pounders. So you can always change things along the way. I even made these little 1.5 pounders, soft shot, that I was able to attach right to my plate on the sides. That was a great place for them. Nobody knew they were there. They weren't removable, and it was perfect. Okay, the rock story. So we had a buddy of ours, I'll kind of abbreviate it a little bit, a buddy of ours who was a tad bit underweight. And so what did he do? I think everybody's done this in the past, grabbed a few rocks and put them in his pockets. Well, the next week he shows up as a joke, shows up to the dive site with some painted rocks. Now that's a really pretty one. What he did, he painted them bright red and painted, I think it was like 2, 3, and 4 on the rocks. So pretending that this one weighed 2 pounds and 3 pounds and 4, just to get a little rise.
We should reiterate that we don't suggest or teach putting rocks in your ballast.
Right. But that, the funny part of it, years ago, that's how it was done.
I completely understand. And years ago, they used to breathe air at 300 feet.
Long hoses that way. No, I know. But anyway, that's kind of what happened, and no, not the greatest thing, but it was pretty comical. So
Mm.
recap: lead weight, all different styles, from soft to hard lead to different shapes and sizes.
No, absolutely. Brian, you got anything to add on weight and weight pockets and in different styles, different places to hang it? What do you got?
I will say that over the years, my values on lead weight has changed. Back when I first started, I bought one of the soft belts that was preset, 30-pound belt, which is not a cheap belt.
Seasoft.
Seesaw.
Oh, okay.
I remember that. You had to, as at a dive shop, you actually had to buy the whole display, and then they would have the Seasoft laid over it. I
Yep.
remember perfectly.
Now we use it for training. We've got the 4-pound, the 8-pound. It's great. It's great for classes.
Yep.
So I bought one for me. Didn't take too long before I relaxed, calmed down, and now that 30-pound belt that I had, it sits in my garage.
It's a boat anchor.
Right? So I'm like, but I really like the Seasoft weights. They're the soft bags. You can stuff them anywhere, and you don't have lead pushing into you.
Right.
You don't have a hard thing. Well, 3 weeks ago, I'm out in the backyard, and I'm being a mechanic. I got some 5-gallon buckets of lead, and I'm melting them down, and I'm using a donut tin for making donuts.
Mm-hmm.
And I found if I pour it just to the top of the center post, it gives me a 2-pound weight. If I do that and then sandwich another one on top of it, I got a 4-pound weight. If I fill it all the way to the top, and then I take another one like that, it gives me a 5-pound weight. So I've been making my own lead weights because they go in pouches now that are not pressed tight against me. So to go and spend a lot of money on the soft weights for me is not that important, because I'm not putting them on a belt like we see there, where it's digging into your side,
Yeah.
which is where the Seasoft weights come in nice. Like that one belt there with the blue pouches. I had one very similar to that, and it was great with the Seasoft weights. You take that and you drop a 4-pound or 5-pound lead brick into the pouches, and strap that on tight. It can get pretty uncomfortable. But yeah, I still have, I don't know, a half a bucket worth of lead to go through. But last week I think I made almost 60 pounds of lead in 2 pounds, 4 pounds, and 5-pound increments. That fit amazing into the pouches that are on my gear. My sister went to Florida, and she's like, "Oh, I need another 10 pounds." So I sent her with all kinds of lead, her and my brother-in-law, because all their weight is in integrated pouches. Nothing is on a belt.
Yeah.
And when she saw the ones I made, she's like, "Oh, I really like those," because they're just little compact. They're donuts basically. You look at them, and it's like, yeah, it's a donut.
Yeah.
But they work. I mean, it doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to be expensive, put in quotes. It just needs to do the job of offsetting your buoyancy,
Mm-hmm.
or the buoyancy of all the gear you're bringing.
Well, we're just about out of time. We do have 3 more pieces of gear to go over. We'll save that for next
time.
week.
Yeah.
In closing, anyone have anything to add? So we went over SPGs, different styles, different types. I didn't get any. Oh, maybe this one is kind of a side profile, but they have different thicknesses. They have what they call a full-size SPG or a thin mini SPG. They even have buttons that go on your deco tanks.
Yeah, I like those. I couldn't read mine. And go back to that for 1 sec. Go back to the SPGs. You know, for me, the most important thing, I didn't even think about this while we were talking about it, was readability or legibility. For me, I've had ones that I just could not read.
Yep.
At a quick glance, I want to be able to look at it. And also, I want to say that it glowed in the dark, but I could be wrong. I don't remember if my Access Scuba ones.
Most of them are luminescent. Most of them,
Yeah.
when you shine a light on them,
Yeah,
they will glow.
but it had to be legible. That was the key for me.
Yep. And then we all touched on bottom timers, just basic, something to keep track of depth and time. Brian did a great job going over computers. We talked about tanks, BCDs, buoyancy compensating devices, and we talked about different weighting options. Anyone have anything to add before we end on any of those pieces of equipment?
Go back one screen.
Go back one screen.
Right there. So if you're looking at the single tank wing on the right-hand side,
Yep.
that's a donut, right? Versus what's the other one called?
A horseshoe?
Horseshoe style.
Yep.
That really is just going to play into where the air moves and how it moves underwater.
And if you'll get an air trap or not.
Yep. So obviously the one in the center, that's for doubles.
Yep.
It's, how much wider it is. Yeah. But you can use that back plate on the other one easily. It's the same
Right.
thing.
This
Yeah.
back plate will go from this wing to this wing without needing to adjust
Anything.
the fit to the
Right.
person's body.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Very good, guys. I don't really have anything to add. We can do actually a combination next week. We can combine the last 3 pieces of gear: boots, fins,
Don't say it.
and cutting tools.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So we can combine those 3 pieces of gear, and we can also talk about diver etiquette that we wanted to talk about, whether it's at a shore dive site or on a boat or wherever. Just diver etiquette. How about
Things we've noticed along the way.
Yeah, we should just call it an etiquette class in general, but
Yeah.
as it applies to scuba diving. So, real quick, thanks for joining us, guys. Thank you for all your help and your input on everything we've been doing, and we will see you guys next week.
Yep.